Tonight, a broken medic will do the impossible, or die trying. They say the weak don't survive winter in the Northern Territories. Tonight, Mara Vance, a rejected Omega with nothing left to lose, will prove them all wrong. 19 innocent lives hang in the balance, one desperate choice, one frozen hell, one woman who refused to let cruelty win. If you want to see how an outcast becomes a legend, stay until the very end. Drop a like if you believe courage beats power, and comment what city you're watching from. Let's begin. The banquet hall blazed with golden light, but Mara Vance felt nothing but cold. She stood at the edge of the grand room, her fingers clutching a glass of untouched wine, watching the pack celebrate another successful hunt. Laughter rolled through the crowd like thunder. The fire roared in the massive stone hearth. Everywhere she looked, wolves in fine clothing drank and danced, their faces flushed with warmth and victory. Mara didn't belong here. She knew it. They knew it. But tonight was supposed to be different. Tonight, Alpha Kane Murdoch, her mate, her bond, the man she'd loved for 3 years, was supposed to stand before the pack and finally acknowledge their union publicly. She'd waited so long, endured so much silence, so many whispered excuses. Not yet, Mara. The pack isn't ready. Give me time. But tonight he'd promised. Tonight, he said, everything would change. Mara smoothed down the front of her dress, a simple blue thing, the nicest she owned, and tried to steady her breathing. Across the room, Kane stood on the raised platform beside the Elder Council, his broad shoulders draped in the black ceremonial cloak of leadership. He looked every inch the alpha, powerful, commanding, untouchable. And beside him, laughing at something he'd whispered, stood Vivian Hale. Mara's stomach twisted. Vivian was everything Mara wasn't. Tall, graceful, born into one of the pack's oldest bloodlines. Her dress shimmered like moonlight. Her blonde hair cascaded in perfect waves. She touched Kane's arm with casual intimacy, and he didn't pull away. It's nothing, Mara told herself. She's just a council daughter, politics. He has to be polite. But the way he looked at Vivian made Mara's chest ache. Pathetic, isn't it? Mara flinched. She turned to find Garrett Stone, one of Kane's enforcers, leaning against the wall beside her. He was grinning, his eyes full of cruel amusement. What? Mara managed. You, standing here like a lost puppy waiting for scraps. Garrett took a swig of his drink. Everyone knows he's done with you, sweetheart. You're just too proud to admit it. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Garrett laughed. Come on, Mara. You really think an alpha like Kane would tie himself to a medic? You've got no rank, no family, no power. You're useful when someone needs stitches, sure. But a mate? A Luna? He shook his head. That's a fantasy. Mara's hands trembled. Kane and I are bonded. He told you what you wanted to hear. Garrett's voice dropped, almost pitying. Look, you're not a bad person. You work hard. You patch people up. But you're not Luna material, and you never will be. The sooner you accept that, the less this'll hurt. Before Mara could respond, the sound of a glass chiming cut through the noise. The hall fell silent. Elder Thorne, the pack's head councilman, stood at the center of the platform, his weathered face solemn. Beside him, Kane straightened, his expression unreadable. Brothers and sisters of the Kaylor pack, Thorne began, his voice carrying easily across the room. We gather tonight not only to celebrate our strength, but to honor the bonds that keep us united. Mara's heart pounded. This is it. This is when he'll say it. Alpha Kane has asked to address you all on a matter of great importance. Kane stepped forward. His dark eyes swept the crowd, and for just a moment they found Mara's. She tried to smile, tried to send him reassurance, but his gaze slid past her like she wasn't even there. My pack, Kane said, his voice deep and steady. Tonight, I stand before you to make an announcement that will shape our future. Mara held her breath. For too long, I have delayed choosing a Luna. I told myself I needed time, needed certainty, but the truth is, I've known for months where my heart lies. Yes. Mara's pulse raced. Say it, please. Kane turned and extended his hand toward Vivian. Vivian Hale has agreed to stand beside me as Luna of the Kaylor pack. The room erupted in cheers. Mara didn't hear them. She didn't hear anything except the roaring in her ears, the shattering of something deep inside her chest that she didn't know could break. Vivian stepped forward, radiant and graceful, and took Kane's hand. He pulled her close, and the crowd roared louder. "No," Mara whispered. But no one was listening. She stumbled backward, her vision blurring. Someone jostled her, spilling wine down her dress, but she barely felt it. Her legs moved on their own, carrying her toward the door, toward air, toward anywhere but here. "Mara." She froze. Kane's voice. She turned, hope flaring stupidly, desperately in her chest. He stood at the edge of the platform now, his face carefully blank. Vivian watched from behind him, her smile sharp. "I need to speak with you," Kane said. "Privately." The crowd parted as Mara walked toward him, every eye on her. She felt their pity, their amusement, their judgment. But she kept moving, because maybe, this was all some terrible misunderstanding. Kane led her into a side corridor, away from the noise. The moment the door closed behind them, Mara whirled on him. "What the hell was that?" Her voice cracked. "You promised me, Kane. You promised tonight. I know what I said." "Then why?" "Because it was a mistake." His words were cold, clinical. "The bond between us was a mistake, Mara. I should have ended it months ago." She stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "You don't mean that." "I do." Kane's jaw tightened. "You're a good medic. You've served the pack well. But that's all you are. I need a Luna who can lead beside me. Someone with strength, lineage, respect. You have none of those things." "I've given you everything," Mara whispered. 3 years, Kane. I stood by you when no one else believed in you. I healed your warriors, kept your secrets, loved you when you had nothing. And I'm grateful." His tone didn't change. "But gratitude isn't love, Mara. And it isn't enough to build a future on." "So that's it?" Tears burned her eyes. "You're just throwing me away?" "I'm releasing you from a bond that never should have existed." Kane reached into his coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I've already signed the severance documents. The council has approved it. As of tonight, you are no longer my mate." He held out the paper. Mara didn't take it. "This is about her, isn't it?" Mara's voice shook. "Vivian, she's from the right family, the right bloodline. This is about the pack," Kane snapped. "About what's best for everyone, not just you." "I'm part of this pack." "You're a medic." His eyes were hard now, all traces of the man she loved gone. "You're not a leader. You're not a warrior. You're weak, Mara, and I can't afford weakness beside me." The word hit her like a physical blow. Weak. She'd heard it her whole life, whispered behind her back, muttered by warriors who resented taking orders from someone who couldn't fight. She tried so hard to prove them wrong, to show that strength came in more forms than claws and teeth. But hearing it from Kane, from the man who'd once held her and sworn she was enough, broke something inside her that could never be repaired. "Sign the papers, Mara." Kane's voice softened, just slightly. "Move on. Find someone better suited to you. This doesn't have to be ugly." "Too late," Mara said quietly. She took the papers from his hand, her fingers numb. For a long moment, she stared at his signature at the bottom, bold and final. Then she signed her name beneath it. "There," she whispered. "Are you happy now?" Kane didn't answer. He just took the papers back, folded them, and walked toward the door. "Kane." He paused, but didn't turn. "I hope she's worth it," Mara said. "I hope she's everything you need. Because one day, you're going to realize what you just threw away, and by then, I'll be long gone." He left without another word. Mara stood alone in the corridor, trembling, the sounds of celebration echoing through the walls. She wanted to scream. She wanted to collapse. She wanted to run back into that hall and tear Vivian's perfect smile off her perfect face, but she did none of those things, because she was too broken to move. Hours later, Mara found herself wandering the cold stone hallways of the pack's compound, her mind a fog of pain and disbelief. She didn't remember leaving the corridor, didn't remember walking. She just moved. Eventually, she ended up in a part of the building she rarely visited, the Eastern Wing, where the orphan wards were housed. The Kalor pack took in abandoned pups from across the territories, children who'd lost their families to war, sickness, or betrayal. It was supposed to be a mercy, a way of showing the pack's strength and compassion. But Mara knew better. The orphan wing was neglected, underfunded, staffed by whoever drew the short straw. The children were fed enough to survive and nothing more. They were trained for labor, not leadership. And once they came of age, they were either absorbed into the lowest ranks or cast out entirely. No one cared about them. No one except Miss Mara? She looked up. A small girl stood in the doorway of one of the dormitories, clutching a threadbare blanket. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, her dark hair tangled, her eyes too large for her thin face. "Lena?" Mara said softly. "What are you doing up?" "I heard crying." Lena stepped closer. "Was it you?" Mara's throat tightened. She wiped at her face, surprised to find it wet. "I'm fine, sweetheart. Go back to bed." "You don't look fine." Mara almost laughed. "Almost. You're too smart for your own good." Lena tilted her head. "Did something bad happen?" "Yes, everything." But Mara didn't say that. Instead, she crouched down and managed a weak smile. "Sometimes grown-ups have hard days, that's all." "Is someone sick?" "No, honey, no one's sick." "Then why are you crying?" "Because I just lost everything. Because the man I loved called me weak and walked away like I was nothing. Because I don't know who I am anymore without him." But Mara couldn't say any of that to a child. "I'm just tired," she whispered. "Go back to bed, Lena. I'll be okay." Lena hesitated, then stepped forward and wrapped her small arms around Mara's neck. "It's okay to be sad," she whispered. "That's what you always tell us." Mara's chest cracked open. She held the little girl tightly, burying her face in her hair, and for the first time that night, she let herself cry. Really cry. Not the silent, dignified tears she'd shed in the corridor, but great heaving sobs that tore through her like a storm. Lena just held on, small and steady and impossibly brave. "Thank you," Mara finally managed, pulling back and wiping her eyes. "You're a good kid, Lena. Don't let anyone tell you different." Lena smiled shyly. "You too, Miss Mara." Mara stood, her legs shaky. "Go on. Back to bed." Lena nodded and turned toward the dormitory, then froze. "Miss Mara?" "Yeah." "Are they really going to do it?" Mara frowned. "Do what?" Lena's voice dropped to a whisper. "Kill us." The world stopped. "What?" Mara breathed. "I heard Warden Griff talking to one of the guards," Lena said, her eyes wide and frightened. "He said there's too many of us, that we eat too much food, that the pack can't afford to keep all of us anymore." Her voice cracked. "He said at sunrise they're taking the weak ones to the woods, and they're not coming back." Mara's blood turned to ice. "Who told you this?" "I heard it. Tonight. After dinner." "Lena, are you sure?" "I'm sure!" Tears spilled down the girl's cheeks. "He said 19 of us. The little ones. The sick ones. The ones who can't fight yet." She grabbed Mara's hand, her grip desperate. "Am I on the list? Am I going to die?" "No." The word ripped out of Mara before she could think. "No, sweetheart, I won't let that happen." "But Warden Griff doesn't get to decide." Mara's voice shook with fury now, burning away the numbness. "Stay here. Don't wake the others. I'll be right back." She turned and strode down the hallway, her heart pounding, her mind racing. 19 children. At sunrise. It couldn't be true. It couldn't. Even Cain, even the council wouldn't. But deep down, Mara knew they would. Because wolves like Cain didn't see the orphans as children. They saw them as resources, as liabilities. And in winter, when food was scarce and the pack's strength mattered most, liabilities were expendable. Mara found Warden Griff in his office, a cramped room that reeked of stale smoke and cheap liquor. He looked up as she stormed in, his expression shifting from surprise to irritation. "Vance, what the hell are you doing here?" "Tell me it's not true," Mara said, her voice shaking. Griff leaned back in his chair, eyeing her warily. "Tell you what's not true. The children, 19 of them, at sunrise." His face hardened. "That's none of your business." "Like hell it isn't." Mara slammed her hands on his desk. "You're planning to execute children, Griff. Children." "I'm planning to do what the council ordered," Griff shot back. "We don't have the resources to feed every useless mouth in this compound, Vance. It's winter. Food's running low. The hunters can't keep up. Something's got to give." So you're going to murder kids? I'm going to cull the weak. Griff stood, his bulk towering over her. That's how packs survive, medic. We keep the strong, we cut the dead weight. Always have, always will. They're not dead weight, they're children. They're orphans with no families, no futures, and no value to this pack. Griff's voice was cold. Half of them won't live past 15 anyway. We're just speeding up the inevitable. Mara stared at him, horror and rage warring in her chest. Does Kane know about this? The Alpha signed off on it himself. Griff smirked. Along with his new Luna. Vivian's idea, actually. She's very practical. Mara's stomach turned. Of course it was Vivian. You can't do this, Mara whispered. It's already done. Griff sat back down, dismissing her. The list is final. The guards are briefed. At sunrise, they'll take the kids to the northern woods and handle it quietly. Clean, efficient, no fuss. I'll stop you, Griff laughed. How? You're not an enforcer, Vance. You're not even bonded to the Alpha anymore. You're nothing. And if you try to interfere, I'll have you thrown in a cell until it's over. Then I'll go to the council. The council approved it. Griff leaned forward, his eyes hard. Face it, medic. You lost. Go back to your clinic, patch up whoever needs patching, and stay out of pack business. It's what you're good at. Mara's hands curled into fists. She wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, wanted to tear this whole building down. But she didn't. Because Griff was right about one thing. She had no power here. No rank, no authority, no voice. She was nothing. So she turned and walked out of his office, her mind spinning, her heart racing. At sunrise, they'll take the kids to the northern woods. She had maybe 6 hours. 6 hours to save 19 lives. 6 hours to do the impossible. Mara walked back to the orphan wing in a daze, her thoughts churning. She didn't have a plan, didn't have resources, didn't have help. All she had was rage and a choice. She could walk away, pretend she never heard anything, go back to her clinic, keep her head down, survive. Or she could fight. The dormitory was quiet when she slipped inside. 19 small beds lined the walls, each one occupied by a child who had no idea what was coming. Lena sat on her bunk, wide awake, her eyes full of hope and terror. Miss Mara? She whispered. What did he say? Mara looked at her, looked at all of them, weak, forgotten, expendable, just like her. And in that moment, something inside Mara Vance snapped, not broke, snapped, like a bone setting wrong, then breaking again so it could heal right. Pack your things, Mara said quietly. Lena blinked. What? All of you. Pack everything you can carry. Clothes, blankets, anything warm. Mara's voice was steady now, calm in a way that terrified her. We're leaving. Leaving? One of the older boys, a gangly kid named Finn, sat up. Where are we going? Away from here. Mara moved through the room, pulling packs and bags from the storage bins. North, to the frontier. The frontier? Finn's eyes widened. That's suicide. No one survives out there. No one survives here either. Mara turned to face them, her voice sharp. Listen to me. All of you. In a few hours, guards are going to come for 19 of you. They're going to take you into the woods, and you're never coming back. Do you understand what I'm saying? Silence. Then Lena whispered, They're really going to kill us? Yes. The word hung in the air like smoke. But I'm not going to let that happen, Mara said fiercely. We're leaving, tonight, right now, and we're not stopping until we're somewhere safe. There's nowhere safe, Finn said, his voice breaking. We're orphans. No pack will take us. We'll freeze to death out there. Maybe. Mara knelt in front of him, gripping his shoulders. But maybe not. Maybe we'll make it. Maybe we'll find somewhere better, or maybe we'll die trying. She looked around at all of them. But I'd rather die fighting than let them murder you in your sleep. Slowly, one by one, the children began to move. They packed in silence, their small hands working quickly, efficiently. They'd learned early how to survive on nothing, how to move fast, how to stay quiet. Within 20 minutes, they were ready. Mara led them through the eastern corridors, her heart pounding. She'd worked in this compound for years. She knew every exit, every blind spot, every guard rotation. She also knew the vehicle bay. The pack kept a small fleet of trucks for supply runs, patrol routes, and emergency evacuations. Most of them were locked down tight, but Mara had treated enough mechanics over the years to know where they hid the spare keys. She found an old cargo truck near the back, its engine cold but functional. She loaded the children into the covered bed, whispering for them to stay quiet, stay low, stay together. Then she climbed into the driver's seat, her hands shaking as she turned the key. The engine roared to life. For a heartbeat, Mara waited for alarms, for shouts, for guards to come running, but the compound stayed quiet. She shifted into gear and drove. The gates were unmanned at this hour, another cost-cutting measure Vivian had pushed through, and Mara slipped through into the night without a soul noticing. The moment they hit the open road, Lena whispered from the back, "We did it." "Not yet," Mara said quietly. "We're not safe yet." But for the first time in hours, she felt something other than pain. She felt alive. Behind her, the Kalor Pack compound disappeared into the darkness. Ahead, the frozen frontier waited. And Mara Vance, the weak medic who'd just stolen 19 children from the jaws of death, drove toward it without looking back. They made it 30 miles before the storm hit. One moment, the sky was clear and cold, stars blazing overhead. The next, snow whipped across the windshield in blinding sheets, the wind howling like a living thing. Mara gripped the wheel tighter, her knuckles white. The road, barely more than a dirt track through the wilderness, vanished beneath the snow. She slowed to a crawl, squinting through the storm, praying she didn't drive them off a cliff. "Miss Mara?" Finn's voice came from the back, muffled by the tarp. "Are we okay?" "We're fine," Mara lied. "Just a little snow." The truck lurched suddenly, slamming sideways as the wheels hit a patch of ice. Mara fought the skid, her heart in her throat, and somehow kept them on the road. "It's getting worse," Lena whispered. She was right. Mara could barely see 5 feet ahead now. The storm was turning into a full blizzard, the kind that buried entire villages and didn't thaw until spring. "Keep going," she told herself. "Just keep going." But the universe had other plans. The truck hit something, a rock, a rut she didn't know, and the front tire exploded with a sound like a gunshot. The vehicle spun wildly, careening off the road, and slammed into a snowbank with bone-jarring force. The engine died. Silence, except for the howling wind. "Everyone okay?" Mara called. A chorus of shaky voices answered. "Yes, Miss Mara." She tried the ignition. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Damn it. Mara climbed out into the storm, snow stinging her face, and circled the truck. The front axle was bent, the tire shredded. Even if she could fix it, and she couldn't, they didn't have a spare. They were stranded. 40 miles from the Kalor compound, 100 miles from the northern border, in the middle of a blizzard with 19 children and no shelter. "This is it," a voice whispered in her mind. "This is where you die." Mara looked back at the truck, where 19 pairs of frightened eyes watched her through gaps in the tarp. "No," she thought fiercely, "not yet." "Everyone out," she called. "Bring your packs. Stay close." "Out?" Finn stared at her like she'd lost her mind. "Miss Mara, we'll freeze faster sitting here." Mara hauled open the cargo door, helping the smaller kids down. "We keep moving, north, on foot." "We'll never make it," Finn said desperately. "We will." Mara grabbed his shoulders, forcing him to meet her eyes. "Because we don't have a choice. Now move." They moved. Mara tied the children together with rope, one line connecting all of them so no one could get lost in the storm. She put the strongest kids at the front and back, the smallest in the middle. Then she shouldered the heaviest pack herself and started walking. The snow was waist-deep in places. The wind cut through their clothes like knives. Every step was agony, and Mara knew they couldn't keep this up for long. But she kept walking. One foot, then the other. Again. Again. Behind her, the children struggled to keep up. Some cried, some stumbled, but they didn't stop. "Just keep moving," Mara repeated silently. "Keep moving, keep moving, keep—" "Miss Mara!" Lena's voice sharp with fear. Mara turned. Lights. Distant, but getting closer. Vehicle headlights cutting through the storm. "They found us," Finn whispered. Mara's blood ran cold. She didn't know how. Maybe a guard saw them leave. Maybe Griff noticed the missing truck. But it didn't matter. The pack was coming, and they were out of time. "Run," Mara said. "We can't. Run!" She grabbed Lena's hand and sprinted forward, dragging the line of children with her. They plunged through the snow, slipping and falling and scrambling up again, the lights growing brighter behind them. Mara didn't look back, didn't think, just ran. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed. The cold bit into her skin like teeth, but she didn't stop. "I won't let them take you," she thought fiercely. "I won't! I won't!" The lights were close now, so close she could hear the roar of engines, the shouts of men. And then, impossibly, she saw something ahead, a line in the snow, a marker stone, half buried, with a symbol carved into its face. The northern border. We're almost there. "Come on!" Mara screamed, hauling the children forward with strength she didn't know she had. "Just a little farther!" 10 feet, 5. The stone was right there, close enough to touch. A gunshot cracked through the storm. Mara felt the impact before she heard the sound. Pain exploded through her shoulder, white-hot and blinding, and she fell. The world spun. Snow filled her mouth. Her vision blurred, but she didn't let go of Lena's hand. "Miss Mara," the little girl's voice, distant and terrified. "Go," Mara gasped. Blood soaked her coat, hot and sticky. "Cross the line. Go!" "We can't leave you. Go!" Finn grabbed Lena, pulling her forward. The children stumbled across the border, collapsing in the snow just beyond the marker stone. Mara tried to follow. She crawled. One hand, then the other. Dragging herself through the snow inch by inch, her vision fading. Almost there. Almost. Boots crunched behind her. "Got you, medic!" Garrett Stone's voice, cold, triumphant. Mara felt hands grab her ankles, dragging her backward. "No," she whispered. "Should have stayed home," Garrett said. "Now you're going to watch us drag these brats back where they belong. And then? Then you're going to hang for treason." Mara's fingers dug into the snow, desperate, searching for anything. Her hand closed around the marker stone. With the last of her strength, Mara pulled herself forward, over the line, and collapsed on the other side. "Damn it!" Garrett lunged after her, and froze. Every warrior behind him stopped dead, their eyes widening, because standing in the snow, massive and silent and utterly terrifying, was a figure Mara couldn't quite see. "You're on my land," a voice said, deep, cold, absolute. Garrett stumbled backward. "We're retrieving stolen property." "You're on my land," the voice repeated. "Leave." Silence. Then Garrett and his men turned and ran. Mara's vision went black. The last thing she felt was strong arms lifting her from the snow, and a voice low and steady whispering, "You're safe now." Then nothing. Mara woke to warmth. It was so unexpected, so foreign after hours in the frozen wasteland, that for a moment she thought she'd died. Maybe this was what came after: heat, softness, the absence of pain. Then her shoulder throbbed, sharp and insistent, and she knew she was still alive. Her eyes opened slowly. She was lying in a bed, an actual bed with thick furs and wool blankets piled so high she could barely move. Firelight flickered across rough stone walls. The air smelled of pine and wood smoke, and something medicinal she couldn't quite place. Where was she? Mara tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through her shoulder, white-hot and nauseating. She gasped, falling back against the pillows. "Don't move!" The voice came from the shadows near the door, deep, commanding, the same voice that had stopped Garrett and his men at the border. Mara turned her head, squinting through the firelight. A man stepped forward. He was massive, easily 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders broad enough to fill the doorway. His hair was dark, almost black, pulled back from a face that looked carved from granite. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, eyes the color of winter storms, cold and assessing. He wore simple clothes, a dark shirt, leather vest, heavy boots, but carried himself like a king. "Who are you?" Mara's voice came out hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "Ronan Kael." He moved closer, his steps silent despite his size. "Alpha of the Northern Reach. And you're in my territory." The Northern Reach. Mara's blood went cold. She'd heard stories about this place her whole life. The northern packs were brutal, savage, ruled by alphas who killed first and asked questions never. They didn't trade with the southern territories, didn't negotiate, didn't show mercy. And Ronan Kale was the worst of them all. The children? Mara gasped, trying to sit up again. Where are the... Safe. Ronan's hand came down on her uninjured shoulder, firm but not rough, pushing her back down. They're fed, warm, and sleeping in the East Hall. You can see them when you're strong enough to walk. I need to see them now. You need to heal. His tone left no room for argument. You took a bullet through your shoulder, lost a lot of blood. My medics patched you up, but if you tear those stitches open, you'll bleed out before sunrise. Mara stared at him, her heart pounding. Why did you help us? Because you crossed into my territory. That's it? That's the only reason? Ronan's expression didn't change. You asked for sanctuary the moment you crossed that border. Northern law says I have to grant it. He paused. Though I'll admit, most people who ask for sanctuary aren't dragging 19 half-frozen children behind them. They were going to kill them. The words spilled out before Mara could stop them. My pack, the Kalor pack, they were going to execute 19 orphans at sunrise because they couldn't afford to feed them anymore. I couldn't just let that happen. I had to... Her voice broke. I had to do something. Ronan studied her for a long moment, those storm-gray eyes unreadable. So you stole them, drove into a blizzard, got yourself shot, all for kids that aren't even yours. They're children. Mara met his gaze, refusing to look away. That's all that matters. Something flickered across Ronan's face, surprise maybe, or respect, but it was gone before Mara could be sure. Rest, he said finally. We'll talk more when you're stronger. He turned toward the door. Wait. Mara pushed herself up on her good elbow, ignoring the pain. What happens now? To us? Ronan paused. That depends. On what? On whether your old pack tries to take you back. He glanced over his shoulder. And on whether you're worth the war that might start if they do. Then he was gone, the door closing quietly behind him. Mara lay back, her mind racing. She'd made it across the border. The children were safe. For now. But she knew Cain, knew how he thought. He wouldn't just let 19 orphans vanish into the north without consequences, and he definitely wouldn't let the medic who humiliated him by running away remain free. Sooner or later, he would come for them. And when he did, Mara had no idea what Ronan Kale would do. 3 days passed before Mara was strong enough to leave the medical wing. Ronan's medics, 2 stern women named Kira and Senna, had done excellent work. The bullet wound was clean, stitched tight, already starting to heal. They'd given her willow bark tea for the pain, forced broth down her throat when she was too weak to eat solid food, and changed her bandages twice a day with ruthless efficiency. But they didn't talk much, didn't answer questions, just worked in silence and left. Mara got the distinct impression they didn't trust her. She couldn't really blame them. On the morning of the 4th day, Kira finally nodded. You can walk. Don't run. Don't lift anything heavy, and if those stitches pop, it's your own damn fault. Thank you, Mara said quietly. Kira grunted and left. Mara dressed slowly in the clothes they'd left for her. Thick wool pants, a heavy tunic, fur-lined boots. Everything was too big, clearly borrowed, but warm. So much warmer than anything she'd owned in the Kalor compound. She made her way through the corridors of what she was starting to realize was a fortress, not just a pack house. Stone walls 3 feet thick, narrow windows reinforced with iron bars, guards at every turn, silent and watchful. This wasn't a home. This was a military installation. She found the children in the East Hall, just like Ronan had said. The moment Mara stepped through the door, 19 voices erupted. Miss Mara! They swarmed her, small bodies pressing close, careful of her injured shoulder. Lena was crying. Finn looked like he wanted to, but was trying too hard to be brave. A little boy named Toby clung to her leg like a barnacle. You're okay, Lena sobbed. We thought you were going to die. I'm okay. Mara's voice shook. She dropped to her knees, carefully, and wrapped her good arm around as many of them as she could reach. I'm okay. We're okay. They fed us real food, Finn said, his voice awed. Bread and meat and vegetables, as much as we wanted. And there's beds for everyone, another kid added. Soft beds, with blankets. Mara looked around the hall. It was spacious, warm, lined with proper bunks and storage chests. A fire roared in the hearth at the far end. Thick curtains covered the windows to keep out the cold. It was paradise compared to the orphan wing back home. Not home, Mara corrected herself. Not anymore. How are you all doing? She asked softly. Really? The children exchanged glances. Everyone's been nice, Lena said carefully. But they don't really talk to us. They just watch. They think we're going to steal something, Finn muttered, or break something. I heard one of the guards say we were Southern trash. Mara's jaw tightened. Did anyone hurt you? No, but they don't want us here. Finn looked at her with two old eyes. Miss Mara, what happens if they send us back? They won't. But what if— Oh, they won't, Mara repeated firmly. I won't let that happen. She had no idea how she'd keep that promise, but she'd made it anyway. A throat cleared behind her. Mara turned to find Ronan standing in the doorway, arms crossed, watching them with that same unreadable expression. Walk with me, he said. It wasn't a request. Mara squeezed Lena's hand and stood. I'll be back soon. Promise? Lena whispered. Promise. Mara followed Ronan out of the hall and through the fortress corridors. They climbed a stone staircase, passed through a heavy door, and emerged onto a wide balcony overlooking the compound. The view stole Mara's breath. The northern reach spread out below them like something from a myth. Mountains rose on three sides, their peaks white with permanent snow. Dense forests stretched between them, dark and ancient. The fortress itself sat on a high ridge, commanding views of every approach. It was brutal, beautiful, terrifying. Your pack sent a messenger yesterday, Ronan said, his voice cutting through the wind. Mara's stomach dropped. What did they want? You, the children, both. Ronan leaned against the stone railing, his eyes fixed on the distant tree line. Alpha Kane claims you kidnapped pack property, demands we return you immediately for trial. I didn't kidnap anyone, Mara said hotly. I saved them from execution. I know. Ronan's voice was calm. I sent the messenger back with my answer. You're under my protection. So are the kids. If Kane wants you, he'll have to come take you himself. Mara stared at him. You did what? You heard me. That's going to start a war. Maybe. Ronan shrugged. Or maybe Kane's smart enough to back down. You don't know him. Mara's hands clenched. He won't let this go. He can't. If word gets out that a medic stole from him and got away with it, he'll look weak, and weak alphas don't last long. Then he'll come. Ronan finally looked at her, those storm-gray eyes sharp. And we'll deal with it. Why? The question burst out of Mara before she could stop it. Why are you doing this? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Why risk a war for 19 orphans and a runaway medic? Ronan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she'd heard it before. Because a long time ago, I was one of those orphans. Mara's breath caught. My parents were killed in a territorial dispute when I was 6, Ronan continued, his gaze distant. My pack didn't want me. Too young, too weak, too much trouble. They were going to dump me in the woods and let nature take its course. His jaw tightened. But someone stopped them. A warrior named Eric. He took me in, trained me, kept me alive when no one else cared. And when I was strong enough, I challenged the alpha who tried to throw me away, beat him bloody in front of the whole pack, took everything he had. He turned to face her fully. That's how I built this place, not on bloodlines or politics or who's got the right last name, but on one rule. If you're strong enough to survive, you deserve to live. And those kids? He nodded toward the hall below. They survived a death sentence, a blizzard, and a bullet. That makes them stronger than half the wolves I've ever met. Mara didn't know what to say. Besides, Ronan added, a hint of something that might have been humor touching his voice. Anyone crazy enough to drag 19 kids through a snowstorm because it's the right thing to do? That's someone worth keeping around. Before Mara could respond, a shout echoed from the courtyard below. Alpha! Riders approaching from the south! Ronan's expression hardened instantly. How many? 20, maybe more. Armed. Mara's blood turned to ice. It's him! It's Kane. Good. Ronan started toward the stairs. Let's see what he wants. Mara followed, her heart pounding. They descended into the courtyard where warriors were already assembling, hard-faced men and women in leather and steel, weapons ready. They moved with practiced precision, forming defensive lines without needing orders. The fortress gate swung open just wide enough to admit the riders. Kane entered first, astride a massive black horse, flanked by Garrett Stone and a dozen enforcers. He wore his ceremonial armor, polished and gleaming, his face set in an expression of cold authority. But when his eyes found Mara standing beside Ronan, something flickered across his face. Surprise. Anger. Something else she couldn't quite read. Alpha Kyle, Kane said, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I didn't agree to anything. Ronan stood perfectly still, but there was something coiled about him, like a predator ready to strike. You rode onto my land uninvited. Start talking before I throw you off it. Kane's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. I've come to retrieve stolen property. A medic named Mara Vance and 19 orphans who were taken from my pack without authorization. They weren't taken. Ronan's voice was flat. They ran. Big difference. She had no authority to remove pack members. Those kids weren't pack members. You were going to kill them. Ronan took a step forward. Don't pretend this is about law or honor, Murdoch. You got caught trying to murder children, and now you're embarrassed. Kane's face darkened. How I manage my pack is not your concern. It is when refugees show up on my doorstep bleeding out. Ronan gestured to Mara. She crossed the border, asked for sanctuary. I granted it. That's Northern law, unless you want to challenge that law directly. The courtyard went silent. Challenging Northern law meant challenging Ronan himself, in single combat, to the death. Everyone knew what would happen if Kane accepted that challenge. I'm not here to fight, Kane said carefully. I'm here to negotiate. Then negotiate. Kane's eyes shifted to Mara. Come back willingly. Bring the children. Face trial for what you've done. If you cooperate, I'll be lenient. Mara almost laughed. Lenient? You shot me, Kane. Garrett shot you, Kane corrected. Against my orders. He's been disciplined for that. Disciplined. Mara's voice shook with fury. You were going to execute 19 innocent kids and you're worried about discipline? They weren't innocent. Vivian's voice cold and sharp. She rode forward to stand beside Kane, her blonde hair perfect even after hours in the saddle. They were liabilities, drains on resources we couldn't afford. It was a necessary decision. They were children, Mara shouted. They were orphans with no futures, Vivian shot back. We gave them shelter, food, purpose, and when we could no longer provide that, we made the hard choice, the right choice. That's what leadership is, Medic, making decisions weak people like you are too cowardly to make. Weak. Mara took a step forward, ignoring the pain in her shoulder. I crossed a frozen wasteland with 19 kids on my back. I got shot and kept moving. I dragged them to safety when any sane person would have given up. What have you ever done except marry your way into power? Vivian's face went white with rage. Enough! Kane's voice cracked like a whip. He turned back to Ronan. Name your price. Whatever she's offered you, I'll double it, triple it. Just return what's mine. She's not yours anymore, Ronan said quietly. You severed that bond yourself, remember? Kane's expression flickered. That was a mistake. Mara's breath caught. What? I made a mistake. Kane's voice was low, almost pleading. The severance was premature. I was under pressure from the council, from Vivian's family. I wasn't thinking clearly. He looked directly at Mara now. Come back. We can fix this. Restore the bond. You can have your position back. My position? Mara's voice was hollow. You called me weak, Kane. You threw me away like garbage. And now you want me back because it's politically convenient? Because I was wrong, Kane insisted. I see that now. You're stronger than I gave you credit for. Braver. You'd make a good Luna. I'd make a good prisoner, Mara snapped. The second I cross back into your territory, you'll lock me up and execute those kids anyway. I'm not stupid. I give you my word. Your word is worthless. The courtyard erupted in murmurs. No one spoke to an alpha like that, not even in another pack's territory. Kane's face hardened. You're making a mistake, Mara. I'm offering you a way out. Take it. No. Then you leave me no choice. Kane straightened in his saddle. Alpha Kale, I invoke the right of reclamation. As the aggrieved party, I demand trial by combat to reclaim my stolen property. Mara's heart stopped. The right of reclamation was ancient law, recognized by all wolf packs. If someone stole from you, you could challenge them, or their protector, to single combat. Winner took everything. Ronan didn't even blink. Accepted. Wait, Mara started. Not you, Kane said, his eyes locked on Ronan. I'm not fighting a wounded medic. I'm fighting the alpha who's harboring her. Even better. Ronan smiled, and it was terrifying. When? Now. The courtyard exploded into motion. Warriors formed a circle. Space cleared in the center. Weapons were drawn and set aside. This would be fought in wolf form, tooth and claw, the oldest way. Mara grabbed Ronan's arm. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Ronan's voice was calm. He invoked the right. If I refuse, I lose all honor. Every pack in the north would see me as weak. But if you lose, I won't. He said it with such absolute certainty that Mara almost believed him. Ronan stripped off his shirt and vest, handing them to one of his warriors. His body was covered in scars, old wounds, battle marks, a lifetime of violence carved into his skin. Across the circle, Kane did the same. They faced each other in the center of the ring. Last chance to surrender, Kane said. Not my style, Ronan replied. Then they shifted. Mara had seen wolves shift before, had watched warriors transform dozens of times. But she'd never seen anything like this. Kane's wolf was massive, black as midnight, easily 400 pounds, with teeth like daggers. He was everything an alpha should be, powerful, terrifying, built for dominance. But Ronan? Ronan's wolf was a monster. Silver-gray fur, nearly white in the winter light. Bigger than Kane by at least 50 pounds, with shoulders that looked carved from stone. His eyes stayed the same storm-gray, cold, and merciless. He looked less like a wolf and more like something that had crawled out of legend to remind the world what fear really meant. The two alphas circled each other, growling low. Then Kane lunged. He was fast, faster than something his size had any right to be. His jaws snapped shut inches from Ronan's throat, claws raking across his shoulder. But Ronan was faster. He twisted aside, using Kane's momentum against him, and slammed into the black wolf's ribs with enough force to crack bone. Kane yelped and rolled, coming up bloody. They collided again, a blur of fur and teeth and rage. The fight was brutal, savage. Both wolves tore into each other with everything they had, blood staining the snow beneath them. Kane fought with skill and precision, every move calculated. But Ronan fought like the North itself, relentless, unstoppable, cold as winter death. Within minutes, it was obvious who would win. Kane was slowing, his movements growing sluggish. Blood poured from a dozen wounds. His breathing came in ragged gasps. Ronan barely looked winded. With one final lunge, Ronan caught Kane by the throat and slammed him into the ground so hard the impact echoed. He held him there, jaws locked around his neck, one move away from ending it. The courtyard held its breath. Kane shifted back to human form, choking, his face pressed into the snow. Yield, he gasped. A yield. Ronan held him for one more heartbeat, a reminder of exactly who had won, then released him and stepped back, shifting to human form as well. He stood over Kane, breathing steady, blood dripping from half a dozen wounds that were already starting to heal. The right of reclamation is denied. Mara Vance and the 19 children remain under my protection. You have no claim here. Kane pushed himself up slowly, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. This isn't over. Yes, Ronan said quietly. It is. Kane's warriors helped him to his horse. Vivian looked like she wanted to say something, but one look at Ronan's face and she stayed silent. They rode out without another word, leaving a trail of blood in the snow behind them. The moment they were gone, Mara ran to Ronan. You're hurt. I'm fine. But his voice was tight with pain. You're bleeding everywhere. Let me... I said I'm fine. He pulled away, his eyes hard. Get the kids. We need to move them deeper into the fortress. Kane might come back with reinforcements. Ronan, now, Mara. She wanted to argue, wanted to force him to let her help, but the look on his face told her it would be pointless. So she turned and ran back to the East Hall, her mind spinning. Ronan had just made an enemy of the Kalor pack for her. For 19 kids he didn't even know. And Cain? Cain looked like a man who would burn the world down before admitting defeat. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Mara spent the next 3 days waiting for the other shoe to drop. She moved the children to the inner keep, where stone walls were thickest and guards most plentiful. She helped Ronan's medics treat his wounds. He let her finally, though he barely spoke during the process. She trained the older kids in basic survival skills, taught them which plants were edible, how to start a fire with wet wood, how to stay quiet when danger came close. Because danger was coming, she could feel it in her bones. The fortress buzzed with tension. Warriors drilled in the courtyard from dawn until dusk. Scouts rode out every few hours, returning with reports of movement along the southern border. Cain was gathering forces, not just his own pack, but allies, mercenaries. Anyone who'd listened to his story about the northern barbarian who'd stolen his property and humiliated him in combat. He's building a case, Ronan said one evening, standing on the same balcony where they'd talked before. His wounds had healed to pink scars, but his expression was darker than ever. Making me look like the aggressor. You're not, Mara said fiercely. You were defending refugees. In his version, you're a kidnapper, and I'm a tyrant harboring criminals. Ronan's jaw tightened. He's petitioning the Continental Council. Mara's stomach dropped. The Council? But they never get involved in pack disputes. They do when one alpha accuses another of violating continental law. Ronan turned to face her. Cain's claiming I broke the Treaty of Territorial Integrity by granting sanctuary to fugitives wanted for crimes against their own pack. If the Council agrees, they can order me to hand you over. And if I refuse, every pack on the continent will have the right to declare war on the Northern Reach. That's insane, Mara breathed. You followed Northern law exactly. Southern law is different. Ronan's voice was grim. Down there, pack alphas have absolute authority over their members, including the right to execute them for disloyalty. By their rules, what you did was treason, and what I did was interference. So what do? We go to the council. Ronan straightened. They're convening an emergency tribunal in 4 days. Neutral territory, halfway between here and Kalor lands. Both sides present their case. The council decides who's right. And if they decide Cain is right, Ronan didn't answer. He didn't have to. I won't let them take the children, Mara said quietly. I don't care what the council says. I won't. I know. Something that might have been respect flickered in Ronan's eyes. That's why you're coming with me to the tribunal. You're going to tell them exactly what Cain tried to do. Make them see those kids as people, not property. You think they'll listen to me? I'm nobody. You're the only witness to what happened in that compound. Ronan stepped closer. You're the only one who can prove Cain ordered those executions. Without your testimony, it's just his word against mine, and he's got a dozen alphas ready to back his version. Mara swallowed hard. What if I'm not enough? What if they don't believe me? Then we fight. Ronan's voice was absolutely certain. And we don't stop fighting until every last one of those kids is safe. They left for the tribunal 2 days later. Ronan took 20 warriors with him, enough to look strong, not enough to seem aggressive. Mara rode beside him on a gray mare that was far too spirited for someone who'd barely been on a horse before, but she managed to stay in the saddle through sheer stubbornness. The children stayed behind under heavy guard, protected by warriors Ronan trusted with his life. Mara had hugged each of them before leaving, promised she'd be back soon, tried not to let them see how terrified she was. Lena had clung to her the longest. What if they make you stay there? The little girl whispered. What if you don't come back? I'll come back, Mara had promised. No matter what happens, I'll come back. She just hoped it wasn't a lie. The ride south took 2 days. They traveled through country that grew gradually less harsh, the mountains giving way to rolling hills, then forests that still held some green beneath the snow. It was beautiful in a way the north wasn't, softer, easier. Mara hated it. On the evening of the second day, they reached the tribunal site, a massive stone amphitheater built centuries ago, before the packs had fractured into territories, when wolves still gathered as one people. It sat in a wide valley surrounded by ancient oaks, their branches bare against the winter sky. Dozens of camps dotted the valley floor. Mara recognized the Kalor banners immediately, black and silver, snapping in the wind. But there were others too. The Crimson Ridge Pack, the Eastern Shore Wolves, the Mountain Crest Alliance. At least 15 different groups, maybe more. "Half the continent is here," one of Ronan's warriors muttered. "Good," Ronan said. "Let them watch." They made camp on the north side of the amphitheater, far from Kane's forces. As the sun set, Mara watched wolves from different packs mingling near the center, talking in low voices, casting glances toward both camps. "They're taking bets," Ronan said quietly, appearing beside her. "On what?" "On whether you're a hero or a criminal." He handed her a water skin. "Drink. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." "What if I freeze up?" Mara's hands trembled slightly. "What if I can't speak in front of all those people?" "You dragged 19 kids through a blizzard while bleeding out." Ronan's voice was matter-of-fact. "I think you can handle some politicians." Mara wanted to believe him. That night, she barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Kane's face, Garrett's gun, the children's terrified expressions, the marker stone at the border, so close and yet impossibly far. When dawn finally came, she felt hollowed out and exhausted. The tribunal began at mid-morning. The amphitheater filled quickly, hundreds of wolves, maybe thousands, packed into stone seats that had held their ancestors centuries before. The Continental Council sat in a raised box at the center, 7 alphas from the oldest bloodlines, chosen to arbitrate disputes that no single pack could resolve. Mara recognized Elder Thorn among them. He looked older than he had at the banquet, his face grave. Kane entered from the south side, flanked by Garrett and Vivian. He wore formal robes now, deep blue edged with silver, every inch the dignified alpha wronged by a savage northerner. Ronan entered from the north in simple black leather, no ceremony, no pretense. Just a warrior who'd come to state the truth. Mara walked beside him, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst. "All rise for the Continental Council," a herald announced. The amphitheater fell silent. The head counselor, an ancient she-wolf named Magistrate Senna, no relation to Ronan's medic, stood. Her voice carried easily across the space, amplified by the stone acoustics. "We are gathered to hear a dispute between Alpha Kane Murdoch of the Kalor Pack and Alpha Ronan Kale of the Northern Reach. The charge is interference in sovereign pack affairs and harboring of fugitives." She turned to Kane. "Alpha Murdoch, present your case." Kane stepped forward with practiced grace. "Magistrates, honored alphas, I come before you seeking justice for a crime committed against my pack and my authority." His voice was smooth, persuasive, everything Mara remembered from their years together. He'd always been good at this, making people believe him, trust him, follow him. 3 weeks ago, a medic in my employ, Mara Vance, committed an act of treason. She stole 19 children from our orphan program, children who were under my protection and care. She then fled north in the middle of a storm, endangering not only herself but every child in her custody. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. When my warriors attempted to retrieve these children safely, Alpha Kale interfered. He granted sanctuary to a fugitive wanted for crimes against her own pack, in direct violation of the Treaty of Territorial Integrity. He then defeated me in combat under false pretenses, using the right of reclamation as an excuse to humiliate me publicly. Kane's voice hardened. "I ask this council to order the return of my pack members and hold Alpha Kale accountable for his interference in sovereign affairs." "Thank you." He sat down to scattered applause. Magistrate Senna turned to Ronan. "Alpha Kale, you may present your defense." Ronan stood. He didn't move to the center of the amphitheater like Kane had, just stood where he was and spoke in that same calm, unwavering voice. "Everything Alpha Murdoch just said is technically true. Mara Vance did take those children. I did grant her sanctuary. I did fight him and win." He paused. "What he didn't mention is why." Ronan gestured to Mara. "This woman risked her life to save 19 kids from execution. Not relocation, not adoption. Execution. Alpha Murdoch ordered his warden to take them into the woods and kill them because his pack couldn't afford to feed them anymore. Gasps echoed through the amphitheater. That's a lie, Vivian shouted from her seat. Then let's ask the witness. Ronan looked at Mara. Tell them what you heard, what you saw. Mara stood on shaking legs. Every eye in the amphitheater turned to her. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat, forced herself to speak louder. I overheard Warden Griff speaking to a guard. He said there were too many orphans, that they ate too much. That at sunrise, they were taking 19 of them, the weak ones, the sick ones, to the northern woods, and they weren't coming back. Hearsay, Kane said smoothly. She heard a conversation out of context and jumped to conclusions. I confronted Griff directly, Mara continued, her voice steadier now. He confirmed it, said the council approved it, said you signed off on it yourself. She turned to face Kane. He told me it was your new Luna's idea, that Vivian convinced you it was practical. Vivian shot to her feet. How dare you? Sit down, Magistrate Senna commanded. Vivian sat, her face white with fury. Do you have proof of this conversation? Another counselor asked. No, Mara admitted. It was late at night, just me and Griff, no witnesses. Then it's your word against a respected warden's. Kane's voice was gentle, almost pitying. Magistrates, Mara Vance was recently severed from her bond with me. She was emotionally unstable, prone to dramatic behavior. Is it possible she misunderstood? Absolutely. Is it possible she fabricated this story to justify stealing my pack members? Also, absolutely. I didn't fabricate anything. Mara's hands clenched. Those children would be dead right now if I hadn't gotten them out. Or they'd be safe and warm in their beds, Kane interrupted. Instead, you dragged them through a blizzard that nearly killed them all. You got yourself shot. You endangered 19 lives based on a misunderstanding, and now you're trying to make yourself look like a hero. That's not what happened. Then where's your proof? Kane spread his hands. Where's the execution order? Where are the witnesses? Where's any evidence at all beyond your word? Mara opened her mouth, closed it. Because he was right. She had nothing, just her memory of a late-night conversation and a child's whispered fear. The amphitheater buzzed with whispers. This is exactly what I warned against, one of the counselors said. Granting sanctuary without verification, without evidence. Any refugee can claim persecution and receive protection, destabilizing pack authority across the continent. Alpha Kyle acted appropriately under Northern law, another argued. He couldn't turn away someone bleeding on his doorstep. Northern law doesn't supersede continental law. This isn't about law, a third counselor cut in. It's about whether we allow alphas to murder their own pack members with impunity. If it happened, the first counselor shot back, which we have no proof of. The argument spiraled, voices rising, different factions forming. Mara watched it all with growing horror, realizing they were losing. Without proof, without witnesses, it was just her word against Kane's, and Kane was an alpha. She was nobody. Enough! Magistrate Senna's voice cut through the chaos. We will take a brief recess to deliberate. Both parties will remain— Wait! A voice called from the entrance. Everyone turned. A figure stood in the archway, silhouetted against the winter sun. Small, thin, wrapped in a cloak far too big for her frame. Mara's heart stopped. Lena? She breathed. The little girl stepped forward, pushing back her hood. Her face was pale, her eyes huge, but her voice was clear and steady. I have proof, Lena said. The amphitheater erupted. Order! Magistrate Senna slammed her staff against the stone. Order! Who are you, child? My name is Lena Vance. The girl walked down the center aisle, her small frame dwarfed by the massive space. I'm one of the orphans Miss Mara saved. How did you get here? Ronan demanded, his face dark. I snuck into the supply wagon. Lena didn't look at him, her eyes fixed on the council. I heard you say Miss Mara needed proof, so I brought it. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is the execution order, Lena said, her voice shaking now but still clear. Warden Griff kept it in his office. I stole it the night before we left. Dead silence. Mara stared at the girl, unable to breathe. Lena, you didn't. You saved us. Lena's eyes met hers, bright with tears, but absolutely determined. I had to save you back. Magistrate Senna descended from her seat and took the paper from Lena's small hands. She unfolded it slowly, her expression unreadable. Then she read aloud. By order of Alpha Cain Murdoch and the Kaylor Council, the following orphans are hereby designated as excess burden during winter rationing. On the morning of December 13th, Warden Griff will escort designated individuals to the northern forest boundary and administer permanent removal from pack resources. This action is classified as necessary culling and will not be subject to review. The paper listed 19 names. Lena's was third. The amphitheater exploded. Wolves shouted from every direction, some in outrage, some in defense, some just adding to the chaos. Cain was on his feet, his face a mask of shock and fury. Vivian looked like she'd been struck by lightning. "That document is falsified," Cain roared. "I never signed." "Your signature is at the bottom," Magistrate Senna said coldly. She held up the paper. "Along with your seal." "It's a forgery. Someone planted—" "The paper is genuine Kaylor stock," another counselor said, examining it. "The seal is authentic. The handwriting matches samples we have from your previous correspondence." Cain's mouth worked soundlessly. "You ordered children killed," Magistrate Senna said, her voice like ice. 19 of them. The weakest, the most vulnerable. You called it culling. It was a resource management decision. You called it culling. The ancient she-wolf's eyes blazed. As if they were animals. As if they were nothing. "We were facing starvation," Vivian shouted, finally finding her voice. "Our stores were running low. The hunts were failing. We had to make hard choices." "You had to choose who lived and who died," Ronan said, his voice cutting across hers. "And you chose to kill children. We chose to protect the pack." Cain's composure was cracking now, desperation bleeding through. 20 people can't survive on food meant for 15. Someone had to— He stopped, realizing what he'd just admitted. The silence that followed was absolute. "So it's true," one of the counselors said softly. "You really did order their execution." Cain's face went from red to white. It was supposed to be quick, painless. They wouldn't have suffered. You were going to murder children." The shout came from the crowd, a female alpha Mara didn't recognize. "What kind of monster?" "I did what was necessary," Cain roared. "I did what any strong alpha would do. You can't tell me none of you have made similar choices." But the looks on the other alphas' faces said otherwise. Magistrate Senna raised her staff. "Alpha Cain Murdoch, you are hereby charged with conspiracy to commit mass murder of minors under your protection. This council strips you of the right to reclaim any member who fled your territory. Furthermore, no." Cain's voice was dangerous now. "No, you don't get to judge me. You sit in your comfortable seats, your packs fat and happy, and you judge me for doing what you were all too cowardly to do yourselves." He turned to face the crowd. "Half of you call you're weak. You just don't call it that. You send them on dangerous missions, or let nature take its course, or claim it was an accident. But it's the same thing. I'm just honest about it." "There is a difference," Ronan said quietly, "between letting the weak prove themselves and executing children in their sleep." "The strong survive," Cain shot back. "That's the law of nature, the law of our people. I was just—" "You were weak," Mara said. Her voice wasn't loud. But somehow, in the stillness following Cain's rant, it carried. "You were weak," she repeated, walking forward to stand beside Lena. "You couldn't feed your pack, so instead of finding new hunting grounds or trading with allies or asking for help, you decided to kill the ones who couldn't fight back. That's not strength, Cain. That's cowardice." Cain's face twisted. "You don't get to—" "I do." Mara's voice was steady now, all fear gone. "Because I was there. I saw what you really are. A weak man who dresses up cruelty as leadership, who throws away anything that makes him look less than perfect." She stepped closer. "You were so worried about looking strong that you forgot what strength actually means. It means protecting the vulnerable, sacrificing for those who can't sacrifice for themselves, doing the hard thing even when no one's watching." She gestured to Lena. "This little girl has more courage in her heart than you've ever had. She risked everything to save me, just like I risked everything to save her. That's strength." Real strength. And you'll never understand it because you only know how to take, how to use people until they're not useful anymore, then throw them away. Tears burned Mara's eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I loved you once. I thought you were everything an alpha should be. But I was wrong. You're nothing, and I'm done being afraid of you. The amphitheater was dead silent. Kane stared at her, something broken in his eyes. Then he turned and walked toward the exit. Alpha Murdoch, this tribunal is not concluded, Magistrate Senna began. I don't care. Kane's voice was hollow. Rule however you want. I'm done here. He left, Garrett and Vivian scrambling to follow. The Kalor warriors filed out behind them, leaving their banners where they stood. Magistrate Senna watched them go, then turned back to Ronan. Alpha Kale, this council rules in your favor. You acted appropriately in granting sanctuary. Mara Vance and the 19 children are formally released from all Kalor authority and may remain in the Northern Reach or seek sanctuary elsewhere as they choose. Ronan bowed slightly. Thank you, Magistrate. Furthermore, Senna's voice hardened. We are launching an investigation into the Kalor Pact's practices. If we find evidence of similar callings or systematic abuse, Alpha Murdoch will face continental charges. But murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. Senna looked at Mara and Lena. You were both very brave today. The council recognizes your courage. Then she sat down, and the tribunal was over. Mara's legs gave out. She sank to the stone floor, shaking all over, unable to process what had just happened. They'd won. She'd faced Kane in front of half the continent and won. Small arms wrapped around her neck. Miss Mara, Lena whispered. I was so scared. Me too, Mara managed. Me too, sweetheart. Ronan crouched beside them, his face unreadable. You shouldn't have come. Lena lifted her chin. Someone had to help Miss Mara. She's always helping us. Something flickered across Ronan's face. Surprise, maybe, or respect. You're braver than most warriors I know. I learned from the best. Lena looked at Mara. Ronan helped them both to their feet. Let's go home. Home. The word hit Mara harder than she expected, because the Northern Reach was home now, wasn't it? The fortress with its stone walls and fierce warriors, and a king who fought for what was right. She had a home. The children had a home. They were safe. Finally, impossibly, safe. They made it halfway back to the Northern Reach before the attack came. It was late afternoon on the second day of travel. The sun hung low in the west, casting long shadows through the trees. Mara was riding near the middle of the group, Lena perched in front of her on the saddle, when one of the scouts came galloping back. Ambush! North Ridge! Ronan's hand shot up, signaling a halt. How many? At least 30, maybe more. The scout's horse danced nervously. Kalor colors. They're blocking the pass. Mara's blood went cold. Kane. He's desperate. Ronan's voice was grim. Knows he's lost everything. Probably figures if he can't have you back, no one can. We can fight our way through, one of the warriors said. Not with civilians. Ronan looked at Mara and Lena. We'd lose half of them in the crossfire. So what do we do? Before Ronan could answer, a familiar voice echoed from the trees ahead. Alpha Kyle, I want to talk. Kane emerged from the tree line, flanked by Garrett and 20 armed warriors. His face was haggard, his eyes wild. Stay here, Ronan told his group. Then he rode forward alone. Don't, Mara called after him. It's a trap. But Ronan was already moving. He stopped his horse 50 feet from Kane's position. You lost, Murdoch. Go home. I don't have a home anymore, Kane's voice cracked. The council's stripping me of my title. My pack's falling apart. Vivian's family has disowned her. Everything I built is gone because of that medic. Because of you, Ronan corrected. You did this to yourself. I did what I had to, Kane's hands shook. And now I'm going to finish it. Give me Mara. Give me the girl who brought that document. I'll let the rest of you go. No. Then you'll all die here. Kane raised his hand. Arrows hissed from the trees. Ronan's horse screamed and went down. He rolled clear, shifting mid-movement, his wolf form exploding out just as more arrows filled the air where he'd been. Scatter, one of Ronan's warriors shouted. Protect the... An arrow took him through the throat. Chaos erupted. Mara jumped off her horse, pulling Lena with her. They dove behind a fallen log as warriors clashed all around them, snarls and screams filling the air. "Stay down," Mara gasped. "Don't move." Something slammed into her from the side. Garrett, in wolf form, massive and murderous. Mara rolled, barely avoiding his snapping jaws. She grabbed a branch, swung it hard into his face. He yelped and lunged again. Then Lena screamed. Mara's head whipped around. Cain, in human form, a knife in his hand, was dragging the little girl backward by her hair. "Let her go!" Mara threw herself at him. Cain backhanded her so hard she tasted blood. "You destroyed everything," he snarled. "Everything I was, everything I worked for. And now you're going to watch me destroy what you love." He pressed the knife to Lena's throat. "No!" Mara scrambled forward on her hands and knees. "Please, Cain, please, she's just a child." "So were the 19 I was going to cull," Cain said, his eyes dead. "You said I was weak for making hard choices. So let's see how strong you are. Watch me kill her, watch me—" Something inside Mara snapped, not broke, transformed. Power she'd never felt before exploded through her veins, hot and fierce and absolutely unstoppable. Her vision sharpened. Her senses expanded. She could hear every heartbeat in the clearing, smell every drop of blood, feel the earth beneath her hands like it was alive. And somewhere deep in her mind, a voice whispered, "Guardian." Mara shifted, but not into a normal wolf. Her form was smaller than most warriors, but blazing silver white, so bright it hurt to look at. Her eyes burned gold, and around her the very air seemed to shimmer with protective energy. Every warrior in the clearing froze. "Impossible," Cain breathed. Guardians were myths, ancient protectors born once in a generation, gifted with power that could shield the innocent from harm. They were legends told to children. They weren't supposed to be real, but Mara was real, and she was done running. She leaped. Cain dropped Lena and shifted, meeting her in midair. The impact shook the ground. Mara didn't fight like a normal wolf. She fought like a force of nature, every move precise, every strike devastating. When Cain's jaws closed around her leg, pain exploded through her, but she didn't stop. She twisted, broke his hold, and slammed him into the frozen earth hard enough to crack ribs. He came at her again. She met him. Again. And again. The battle raged around them, but Mara barely noticed. All she could see was Cain. All she could feel was the furious need to end this, to protect Lena, to make sure he never hurt another child again. Finally, she caught him by the throat and pinned him down. Their eyes met. Mara saw everything in his gaze: rage, fear, recognition of what she'd become, what she'd always been, hidden beneath years of being told she was weak. She could kill him. One move. It would be so easy. But she didn't. Instead, she shifted back to human form, still holding him down. "You're done," she said quietly. "Leave. Take your warriors and go. And if you ever come near these children again, I won't show mercy a second time." For a long moment, Cain just stared at her. Then he shifted back, broken and defeated. "I loved you once," he whispered. "I know," Mara said, "but love isn't enough when you're fundamentally cruel." She let him go. Cain staggered to his feet, looked around at his warriors, half of them dead, the rest wounded and terrified. Looked at Mara, glowing silver in the fading light. Then he walked away. His warriors followed, leaving their dead behind. Silence fell over the clearing. Mara stood in the center of it, her body still humming with power, unable to quite believe what had just happened. "Miss Mara?" Lena's voice small and awed. Mara turned. The little girl was staring at her with wide eyes. "You're glowing," Lena whispered. "I know." Mara looked down at her hands. They were still faintly luminous, silver light fading slowly. I don't know what happened." "I do," Ronan's voice. He'd shifted back to human form, blood streaming from a dozen wounds, but his eyes fierce with something that looked like wonder. "You're a guardian, a true one. I've only read about them in legends." "Guardians protect," one of the older warriors said, limping forward. "They're born to shield the weak from harm, to stand between innocence and cruelty." He looked at the bodies of Cain's warriors scattered across the snow. "You didn't just defend yourself, you defended all of us." Mara's legs finally gave out. She collapsed into the snow, shaking all over. Lena ran to her, wrapping small arms around her neck. "You saved me again." "Always," Mara whispered. "Always." Ronan knelt beside them. "We need to move. Kane's broken, but he might come back with reinforcements." "Let him try," Mara said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. "Next time, I won't let him walk away." Ronan smiled, actually smiled, and offered her his hand. "Come on, Guardian. Let's go home." Mara took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. Behind them, the sun set over the battlefield, painting the snow crimson and gold. And for the first time in her life, Mara Vance felt powerful. But power, she would learn in the days that followed, came with a price no one had warned her about. The journey back to the northern reach took 3 days instead of 2. They moved slower now, carrying their wounded, stopping frequently to rest and treat injuries. Mara helped where she could, falling back into the familiar rhythm of healing work. Cleaning wounds, setting broken bones, mixing poultices from whatever plant she could find beneath the snow. Her hands remembered the motions even as her mind struggled to process what had happened in that clearing. She'd transformed into something out of legend, had fought an alpha and won, had glowed with power that shouldn't exist. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw it again. The silver light, the feeling of absolute certainty, the knowledge that she could protect those children no matter what came at them. It terrified her almost as much as it thrilled her. "You haven't shifted since the battle," Ronan observed on the second night. They sat near the fire while the others slept, his wounds mostly healed now, his eyes sharp in the flickering light. "I'm afraid to," Mara admitted quietly. "What if I can't control it? What if that power takes over and I hurt someone?" "Guardians don't hurt innocents." Ronan poked at the fire with a stick. "It's not in your nature. The power responds to threats, to cruelty, not to fear or confusion." "How do you know?" "Because I've read every text in my library about guardians. After watching you transform, I needed to understand what you are." He glanced at her. "Did you know your eyes still glow sometimes? When you look at the children, when you're focused on healing someone? Just a flicker, like embers." Mara's hand went to her face instinctively. "I didn't realize." "It's beautiful," Ronan said, then seemed to catch himself. He looked back at the fire. "The point is, you're adjusting. Your body's learning to regulate the power. Give it time." "What if I don't have time?" Mara pulled her cloak tighter. "Kane's out there somewhere. He's not going to just disappear. And now that he knows what I am, now he'll be too afraid to come near you." Ronan's voice was certain. "You beat him, Mara, twice. Once in front of the Continental Council, once on the battlefield. He's broken. Whatever happens next, it won't come from him." Mara wanted to believe that, but some part of her knew better. Men like Kane didn't break. They festered. They reached the fortress on the evening of the 3rd day to find it in chaos. Not bad chaos, excited chaos. Word had spread somehow about what happened at the tribunal and the ambush, about Mara being a guardian, about the children being officially free. Warriors lined the walls, cheering as they rode through the gates. Civilians crowded the courtyard, calling out congratulations. Someone had hung banners, rough cloth painted with silver wolves that looked nothing like any pack symbol Mara had ever seen. "What is all this?" she asked, bewildered. "They're celebrating you," Ronan said, something like amusement in his voice. "You're a hero." "I'm not. You saved 19 children, defied an alpha, survived a tribunal, and awakened as a legendary guardian." Ronan dismounted smoothly. "Trust me, you're a hero." Before Mara could respond, the children came pouring out of the eastern hall, all 19 of them, screaming her name, running through the crowd with no regard for the warriors trying to maintain order. Lena reached her first. "You're back! You're back!" The others swarmed around her horse, reaching up, their faces bright with joy and relief. Mara slid down from the saddle and found herself buried in small bodies, small arms, voices all talking at once. "We heard you fought Alpha Kane. Is it true you're magic? Did you really glow set? Are we safe now?" "Yes," Mara said, her voice breaking. "Yes, we're safe now." She looked up to find Ronan watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Then he turned and strode toward the great hall, his warriors following. Kira appeared at Mara's elbow. "Come on, let's get you checked over. You look like you've been through hell." "I feel like it," Mara admitted. She let Kira herd her toward the medical wing while the children trailed behind like ducklings. The medic worked efficiently, checking the partially healed wounds from the ambush, examining the silvery scars left by her transformation. "These are different," Kira said, tracing one of the marks on Mara's arm. "Not like normal healing. The tissue's denser, stronger." "Is that bad?" "Don't know yet." Kira stepped back. "But you're healthy. Exhausted, but healthy. Get some food, get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow." Mara did as she was told. She ate dinner with the children in the Eastern Hall. Real food, hot and plentiful. Nothing like the thin gruel they'd survived on back in Kalor territory. She listened to their excited chatter about everything they'd done while she was gone, how the warriors had taught them to fight, how Finn had accidentally set his bed on fire trying to practice fire starting. "I put it out," Finn insisted, his face red. Eventually, Mara laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange and wonderful. After the children finally went to bed, she found herself wandering the fortress corridors, too wired to sleep. She ended up on that same balcony overlooking the compound, breathing in the cold night air. "Can't sleep either?" She turned to find Ronan leaning against the doorway, his arms crossed. "Too much in my head," Mara said. He moved to stand beside her at the railing. For a while, neither of them spoke, just stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. "What happens now?" Mara asked finally. "Now?" Ronan considered. "Now we rebuild. The Continental Council's investigation into Kalor is already underway. Other packs are distancing themselves from Kane's methods. And you," he glanced at her, "you have choices to make." "What kind of choices?" "Whether you want to stay here, whether you want to take the children somewhere else, whether you want to build something new." Ronan's voice was carefully neutral. "You're a guardian, Mara. That comes with authority, power. Packs would line up to have you. You could name your terms, go anywhere, do anything." Mara's chest tightened. "You want me to leave?" "I want you to choose freely." Ronan turned to face her fully. "You came here running for your life. That's not the same as choosing to stay. And I won't trap you somewhere you don't want to be." "What if I want to be here?" The words came out before she could stop them. Ronan went very still. "Do you?" Mara looked out over the fortress, the stone walls that had sheltered them, the warriors who'd fought beside her, the hall where 19 children finally slept safe and sound. "I spent 3 years in Kalor trying to earn a place I'd never really have," she said quietly. "Trying to prove I was strong enough, useful enough, good enough. And no matter what I did, I was always just the medic, just the weak one they kept around because I could stitch wounds." She turned to face Ronan. "But here? You didn't ask me to prove anything. You just fought for us because it was right. You risked everything for children you didn't know and a woman with no power or status or value." Her voice caught. "You made me feel like I mattered, not because of what I could do for you, but just because." "You do matter," Ronan said, his voice rough. "You always did. Then let me stay." Mara stepped closer. "Let us stay. Me and the kids. We'll earn our keep. I can run your medical wing. The older children can train as warriors. We'll contribute however we can. Just don't send us away." Ronan stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. A real smile, warm and genuine. "You're not going anywhere," he said. "This is your home now, for as long as you want it." A relief crashed through Mara so powerfully her knees went weak. "Thank you." "Thank me by getting some sleep." Ronan's hand briefly touched her shoulder, warm and steady. "Tomorrow, we start building something better." He left her standing on the balcony, her heart full of something that felt dangerously like hope. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Mara threw herself into work with the same fierce determination that had carried her through the blizzard. She took over the medical wing, reorganizing the supplies, training younger wolves in basic healing techniques, establishing protocols for treating injuries. Ronan gave her complete authority over the space. No questions, no oversight, just trust. It was intoxicating. The children thrived. Finn started training with the junior warriors, his gangly frame filling out as he learned to fight. Lena shadowed Mara everywhere, learning to mix medicines and bandage wounds with careful precision. The younger ones attended lessons taught by older pack members, reading, writing, basic survival skills. They weren't orphans anymore. They were pack. But not everyone was happy about it. "This is ridiculous," Mara overheard one warrior muttering to another in the courtyard. "We're supposed to train these southern brats? They're soft, weak. They'll never survive real combat." "The Alpha says—" "The Alpha's distracted." The first warrior spat into the snow. "Ever since that medic showed up, he's been making soft decisions, letting refugees stay, wasting resources on kids who aren't even his blood. Next thing you know, we'll be running a charity for every pack reject in the territories." Mara's hands clenched. She'd been on her way to check supplies, but now she changed direction, walking straight toward the two warriors. They didn't notice her until she was right in front of them. "You have a problem with those children?" Mara asked quietly. The first warrior, a scarred brute named Torvin, sneered. "Not with the kids. With you. Coming in here, changing everything, making the Alpha go soft." "I haven't changed anything. I just saved 19 lives." "You brought weakness into this pack." Torvin stepped closer, trying to intimidate her with his size. "We're warriors. We survive by being strong, cutting loose dead weight. You're teaching the Alpha to collect strays instead of building power." "Those strays," Mara said, her voice hardening, "survived a death sentence, a blizzard, and an armed ambush. How many warriors in this pack can say the same?" Torvin's face darkened. "Watch your mouth, medic." "Or what?" Mara felt that power stirring inside her again, responding to the threat. "You'll try to intimidate me? Hurt me? Go ahead. See what happens." Her eyes flared gold. Torvin stumbled backward, his bravado cracking. "You're not... You can't." "I can." Mara let just a hint of silver light shimmer around her hands. "I'm a guardian. My purpose is protecting the vulnerable. And if you threaten those children, or spread poison about them, or undermine them in any way..." She stepped closer. "You'll learn exactly what a guardian does to people who prey on the weak." Torvin's companion grabbed his arm. "Let's go. Now." They left hurriedly, casting nervous glances over their shoulders. Mara stood alone in the courtyard, shaking slightly. The power faded, leaving her feeling hollow and slightly nauseated. That was either very brave or very stupid. She turned to find Senna, Ronan's head medic, watching from a doorway. "He was threatening the kids," Mara said defensively. "He was." Senna walked closer. "He's also been spreading dissent among the warriors for weeks, claiming you're a bad influence, that the Alpha's losing his edge." Mara's stomach sank. "How many agree with him?" "Not many, but some." Senna's expression was unreadable. "Change is hard for warriors. They're trained to value strength above all else, and you represent something different. Compassion, protection. Those aren't warrior values." "They should be." "Maybe." Senna studied her. "But you can't force that kind of change overnight. And you can't intimidate every dissenter into submission, even if you have the power to do it." "Then what do I do?" "Show them you're not just a guardian. Show them you're a leader." Senna turned to leave, then paused. "The Alpha's holding a war council tonight. Strategy meeting about defending our borders now that Kaelor's in chaos. You should attend." "I'm not a warrior?" "No, you're something better." Senna met her eyes. "You're someone who fights for what's right instead of what's easy. That's the kind of voice we need in that room." She left before Mara could respond. The War Council met in the Great Hall after nightfall. Mara arrived to find 30 warriors already assembled around a massive stone table covered with maps. Ronan stood at the head, his presence commanding even in stillness. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face. "Mara, I didn't expect... Senna said I should be here." Mara's voice was steady, despite her nerves. "She said you need different perspectives." Several warriors exchanged skeptical glances. Torvin, sitting near the far end, scowled openly. "She's right." Ronan gestured to an empty seat near him. "Sit." Mara did, trying to ignore the weight of all those eyes on her. "We were discussing border security," Ronan continued, pointing to the map. "Kaelor's collapsing. Kane's lost control. Half his warriors have deserted. His territories fragmenting into smaller groups fighting for scraps. Good riddance, one warrior muttered. Except it's creating a power vacuum, Ronan said. And power vacuums attract opportunists. We've had 3 separate groups try to cross into our territory this week alone. Raiders, refugees, scouts from other packs testing our defenses. So we drive them back, Torvin said. Show them the Northern Reach isn't open for business. We can't turn away everyone, another warrior argued. Some of those refugees are genuinely fleeing violence. Not our problem, Torvin shot back. We let in one group, word spreads, and suddenly we're drowning in weak Southerners looking for handouts. Like us? Mara said quietly. The room went silent. Torvin's face reddened. That's different. How? Mara leaned forward. We came here fleeing violence. We had nothing. We were exactly the kind of weak Southerners you're talking about. So what's the difference? Why were we worth saving and they're not? Because you... Torvin struggled for words. Because the Alpha granted you sanctuary, so grant it to others. Mara looked at Ronan. You said the Northern Reach was built on one rule. If you're strong enough to survive, you deserve to live. Those people making it to our borders, they survived Kalor's collapse. They crossed dangerous territory to get here. That takes strength. It takes desperation, Torvin countered. And desperate people are dangerous. So are cornered ones. Mara stood, moving to the map. You want to secure the borders? Fine. But you can't do it by building walls and driving everyone away. That just creates enemies on every side. She traced a line along the southern border. What if instead of turning refugees away, we evaluated them? Took in the ones who could contribute, warriors, craftsmen, healers, people who strengthen the pack instead of weakening it. And the ones who can't contribute? A warrior asked. We help them move on safely, give them supplies, point them toward packs that are accepting refugees, make sure they don't die in the wilderness. Mara met his eyes. That way we build a reputation not as conquerors or isolationists, but as a pack that's strong enough to be merciful, strong enough to choose kindness over cruelty. Kindness gets you killed in the territories, Torvin snarled. Cruelty got Kane destroyed, Mara shot back. He chose strength over compassion and lost everything. You want to follow that path? Torvin surged to his feet. You don't get to lecture me about strength. You're a medic playing guardian. You don't know what it takes to hold territory, to make hard decisions? I know what it takes to stand up to an alpha who wanted to murder children. Mara's voice was steel. I know what it takes to drag 19 kids through a blizzard because it was right. I know what it takes to face down the Continental Council and risk execution for people I barely knew. She stepped closer to Torvin. What have you ever risked for anyone but yourself? Torvin's hand went to his knife. The room erupted, warriors shouting, some backing Torvin, others calling for order. Mara stood her ground, feeling that power building inside her again, silver light beginning to glow beneath her skin. Enough! Ronan's voice cracked like thunder, instant silence. He moved around the table to stand between Mara and Torvin, his eyes hard. Torvin, you will apologize to Mara. Now. I will not. You will. Or you'll leave this pack tonight. Ronan's voice dropped to something dangerous. She's right. About all of it. We're not building a fortress for cowards afraid of change. We're building a pack strong enough to defend what matters. And what matters is protecting people who can't protect themselves. That's not weakness. That's the hardest kind of strength there is. He turned to address the whole room. Mara's plan is what we'll do. We evaluate refugees, take in those who strengthen us, help the rest move on safely. Anyone who has a problem with that can leave now. No one moved. Ronan looked at Torvin. Apologize. Torvin's jaw worked. Finally, through gritted teeth, I apologize. Good. Now sit down and be useful or get out. Torvin sat, his face murderous. The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Warriors who'd been skeptical of Mara started asking her opinion on defensive positions, supply routes, how to distinguish genuine refugees from potential threats. She answered as best she could, drawing on her experience treating travelers, understanding patterns of movement and desperation. By the time the council ended, she'd earned grudging respect from half the room, and from the other half, deeper resentment. As everyone filed out, Ronan caught her arm. That was risky. I know. Torvin has allies. Challenging him publicly made you a target. I know that too. Mara met his eyes. But I wasn't going to let him poison the pack against those children, or against the idea that compassion can be strength. Ronan studied her for a long moment. Then, incredibly, he smiled. You're going to change everything, aren't you? I'm going to try. Good. His hand lingered on her arm, warm and steady. For what it's worth, I think you're right about all of it. Something passed between them. Understanding, respect, something else Mara didn't have a name for yet. Then Ronan let go and headed for the door. Get some rest. Tomorrow we start implementing your plan. Mara stood alone in the great hall, her heart racing. She'd just challenged the warrior culture of the Northern Reach, had claimed authority she hadn't earned through combat or bloodline, had made enemies who would remember this. But she'd also made allies. And more importantly, she'd refused to be silenced. The medic everyone had called weak was finding her voice. And the Northern Reach was starting to listen. Honk. 3 days later, the first group of refugees arrived at the border. Mara stood with Ronan and a squad of warriors watching a ragged line of wolves trudge through the snow. 20 of them, maybe 25, exhausted, starving, eyes hollow with fear and trauma. They're from Kylor, one of the scouts reported. Lower ranks. They say their territory's fallen completely now. Cain disappeared. Vivian fled south. The warriors who stayed are fighting over what's left. Ronan looked at Mara. Your call. She blinked. What? You designed this system. You make the first evaluation. His voice was steady. I trust your judgment. Mara's throat tightened. Then she squared her shoulders and walked forward to meet the refugees. A woman at the front of the group dropped to her knees in the snow. Please, we have children, elderly. We can work. We can fight. We can do anything you need. Just don't send us back there. Mara recognized her. Sandra, one of the hunters from Kylor. She'd never been cruel, but she'd never been kind either. Had looked the other way when the orphans were mistreated. Stand up, Mara said quietly. Sandra looked up, saw her face, and went white. Mara, you're alive. Stand up, Mara repeated. Sandra stood on shaking legs. I'm sorry for what happened, for not helping when... Save it. Mara's voice was cold. You didn't speak up when Cain ordered those children killed. You didn't help when we ran. You only care now because you need something from me. Sandra's face crumpled. You're right, I was a coward. But please, if not for me, then for... She gestured behind her. Mara looked past her and saw children huddled in the center of the group. 3 of them, maybe 4 or 5 years old. Their faces were familiar. She'd treated them once or twice in the medical wing. Her resolve wavered. She walked past Sandra to the children, crouching down in the snow. Hey, remember me? The smallest one, a girl with dark hair and wide eyes, nodded. You're Miss Mara. You fixed my arm when I fell. That's right. Mara touched her cheek gently. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Just cold and hungry. Mara stood and turned back to Ronan. They stay, all of them. Torvin, standing with the warriors, scoffed. Just like that? No evaluation? No, they have children. Mara's voice cut across his. We're not sending children back into a war zone. End of discussion. Ronan nodded. Agreed. Get them inside, fed, warm. We'll sort out details tomorrow. As the refugees filed through the gates, Sandra caught Mara's arm. Thank you. I don't deserve... No, you don't. Mara pulled free. But those kids do.